Us to talk more about it is our house epidemiologist from the University of Ottawa, Raywat Deonandan. How are you tonight?
I'm very well. How are you?
Doing well. You had a chance to look over some of the things that Manitoba is planning, juxtaposed amongst the other provinces. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to look up at some point, right? And ideally, I err on the side of caution. I would like most provinces to wait a little longer. But if you're going to open now, it's not a bad plan. And Manitoba, your caseload data is pretty good. You've got about 273 cases. You've performed about 24,000 tests. That gives us a test positive rate of about 1%, which is what we look for in a society that's about to open. And if we assume that the actual number of real cases is 50 times as high, which I think is a fair assumption, so the prevalence is still around 1%. So I think you're in a good position to open up, to be honest.
We saw some of the modeling data today that said that things could have been a lot worse in Manitoba, and I think they released that today to give the public some sort of yardstick or measuring stick to say, okay, this is what it could have been.
The problem with modeling is it's imprecise, as everyone knows. And we always say, do not think of this as a crystal ball, and we shouldn't. And so a lot of the models in North America have been a little bit pessimistic in projecting the death toll. And that's partly because it was based on a case fatality rate, a death rate, that we saw in China and Italy, and that hasn't been the same rate that we saw here. So it was always going to overshoot a bit. Having said that, all the steps that we took, the mitigation steps, the social distancing, the hand washing, all that stuff worked. So we should congratulate ourselves that we haven't got that death toll. So we shouldn't think that we were wrong in estimating that number of cases, but we also shouldn't feel too afraid of using the models and make plans for the future.
And in this way, what I see ahead is that the information that was released today is that we expect that there will be more cases, hundreds of more cases, as we do get that next wave and maybe second, third wave, depending on when we actually get a vaccine on this. So hospitals are prepared. We're prepared to test as much more as possible. So this becomes a risk management exercise, doesn't it? And you appreciate that as an epidemiologist because, you know what, I will always think, and I'll compare this, when I cross the street, I don't cross blindly, I look both ways. And sometimes, if I'm riding my bike, I'll look twice both ways just to be sure. I'll look around me. And I think that's the rule of life here as we go on, is that we have to take all strategies to mitigate, and if we're not sure, we simply don't go.
That's a really good way of looking at it. I'm going to steal that metaphor when I talk to other people. So, yeah, we have to be careful. It's as simple as that. It doesn't mean we can't have a life. It doesn't mean we can't have an economy and a social life and interaction. It just has to be done carefully. And we've moved from the phase of having the epidemiologists manage the outbreak with the data and scary stories to the phase where the city managers and the supervisors, the human resources people now have to manage it by putting together plans for retreating to safety if the appropriate signal manifests. Right? And so the kind of signal we look for is an increase in new cases continuously over several days. That shows us that the curve is on the rise again. On the other hand, if you're seeing just a sporadic couple of cases here and there, that means you've got isolated outbreaks that we can probably contain. But when you see that curve start to rise, then you see that as a sign to run back inside. So if you've got that infrastructure in place, I don't see why we shouldn't have confidence in moving forward in our lives.
Confidence in moving forward with our lives, but should we be looking at still staying in our individual bubbles? And when I say individual bubbles, I'm talking about individual provinces as much as possible, and not even thinking about crossing the border, which is a mere couple of hours south of us right now.
I think the U.S. border should remain closed to us. random travelers. Obviously, there are these shipments of goods coming across the border regularly. We can't survive without those trucks. But we should not anticipate travel for pleasure internationally for some time. That's going to be difficult for many people to hear, and for those jurisdictions dependent upon tourism as a source of income, that's going to be hard. But particularly for a province like Manitoba and your neighbor Saskatchewan, who have a low caseload, don't risk polluting that sanctuary that you currently have by bringing in unnecessary external sources of infection. I don't see that as being a rational thing to do when you can have a fully functioning, free-ish economy that's self-contained. So, if I were advising people in power, which I'm not, I would say give some serious thought to reducing interprovincial travel and maybe eliminating it entirely.
What are the next steps that we should be looking for in the numbers as we go forward? Can we learn more about, for example, who was hit the hardest and why? Is there a smog issue? Is there a smoking issue? Because now we're moving into that phase of we want a treatment and ultimately a vaccine. So we do have to kind of figure out who it hit the hardest and why, don't we?
Yeah, eventually that's going to be part of the plan here. What we're going to find, I'm pretty sure, is it's affected people who are innately unwell. And unwellness manifests as underlying chronic conditions. I heard it described really well that what we're seeing here is the long-term impact of chronic disease undermanaged, manifesting quickly in a short time frame because of the pressures of an infectious disease. So when we think about chronic disease, obesity, bad nutrition, smoking, these have impacts years down the road, and we don't think about that. We continue with our bad behaviors now. An infection, on the other hand, can kill you within a matter of hours, days, or weeks. So we're terrified of that. With this disease, those conditions that made us vulnerable to the chronic conditions are now making us vulnerable to this infectious condition. So it's an opportunity to get our innate unwellness in order. Can we improve our nutrition? Can we go to the gym more? Can we get our body mass index down to something healthy? Can we reduce our smoking? Can we get our micronutrient intake up to an optimal level? These are the things in the long run that will make us less susceptible.
Oh, I know.
And the answer is no, we can't go to the gym, and we don't know when we can go to the gym.
When can we go to a Bomber game again? When can we go to a Jets game? That's what we want to know. Not this year, I bet.
No, maybe not this season. Possibly by the end of the year, possibly, but I wouldn't bank on it.
Well, at least we can go camping.
That's true.
Go hang out on a patio.
There are treatments coming down the pipeline that are looking pretty good. So have some optimism.
We are reporting on the one that Dr. Fauci was referencing. Remdesivir is looking like it's holding, and I say this with a grain of salt, some promise, so we'll wait and see. And that's just one, right? There's a lot smarter people that are looking into it than us.
Yeah, though there's a flotilla of treatments coming down the pipeline. That's just the first one to show efficacy. And it isn't a strong effect, but it's some effect. And other ones include this thing called convalescent plasma, which we take the antibodies from recovered patients and spin them down and give them to others as a prophylaxis. That's showing some promise as well. The vaccine is going to be years away, but these things come much faster. And so things like convalescent plasma is what we call a passive vaccine. We can give you the immunity now that won't last long and last weeks and maybe months. But it's the kind of thing that can be the healthcare workers and prevent them from getting sick, and that in turn prevents us from getting sick. So if we can stop it at its front lines, the rest of us are protected. So again, I'm always optimistic, and I see us getting a handle on this thing pretty soon.
Well, I see us sitting on a restaurant patio as of Monday. How about you, Raywat?
No, my physician spouse won't let me out. So,
or will your premier? I'm not sure your premier's letting you out either.
There's that too, yes. So I'm going to do this. Enjoy the fact that you have a low caseload. That is a gift, and don't make it worse. right? Don't give the population an excuse to increase that caseload, because right now you have a sanctuary of sorts in which you can experience freedom unlike other provinces can experience.
Raywat Deonandan, I won't say that we won't talk to you again, because I know that we will. I think we'll miss these conversations when all of this is in our rearview mirror, so we'll have to look for more reasons to have you on. He's our house epidemiologist from the University of Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you.